AFIO Now is presented by Northwest Financial Advisors, where our world revolves around you.
Hello everyone, this is Jim Hughes with AFIO Now. We are a program of recorded interviews with former senior U.S. intelligence officers. And today I have a real treat. I have two ladies, literally pioneers in the U.S. intelligence community. Joining me as co-host and interviewer is Linda Millis. Linda is an assistant professor at Marymount University. She has over 30 years of service in the U.S. intelligence community at NSA, CIA, ODNI, the White House, and the President's Commission on Intelligence Reform. And I'm very pleased to say Linda is also an AFIO board member. She also has a BA from University of Maryland in Russian Studies and an MA from Johns Hopkins SAIS in International Public Affairs. Linda, welcome back to AFIO Now.
Thank you, Jim. It really is a pleasure for me to be able to do this interview with another woman trailblazer in the community, Jonna Mendez. And today we're going to talk about her latest book called In True Face. So welcome, Jonna. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So just to get started, I know that you have written and co-authored several other books, Spy Dust, Moscow Rules, and Argo. So I'm just curious, what was the motivation behind this book and how is it different than the books you've published before?
Well, Linda, this book is quite different. The motivation is quite different. COVID was the motivation. I was like we all were. I was here cooped up, did a whole bunch of jigsaw puzzles, sent my successful results, pictures. I sent them to my colleagues and friends. They asked me to stop. The book was the next project. I thought it was going to be pretty straightforward and quite simple. It was a memoir of what it was like, what my career was like working in the CIA. It kind of grew while I was writing it. It got bigger. I realized I couldn't tell my story without including a lot of other women in the CIA and their stories peripherally, but still we were having similar experiences. And then even outside of the CIA into the American workplace, starting with my mother, who worked at Boeing while I was growing up. So it all kind of went into a stew, and what came out was this book called In True Face.
Yeah. So, during COVID, I too did a bunch of puzzles. I think because I started NSA from the Puzzle Palace. So that was my natural thing. So, but I wish I should have used my time more wisely and written a book as you did. So anyway, when I was reading the book, I really, really did enjoy it. I hope everybody who's listening takes the time to read the book. I felt like it was like almost you had two careers. You started out as what they call a so-called contract wife, and then you transitioned into a senior leader in clandestine operations and disguise. So I was wondering if it felt like that to you with your life, and how did that transition feel to you?
Of course, there was a transition, and it took a career to do the transition, but it felt to me very organic. I was moving forward and slowly up. I was not nearly as interested in moving up as I was in moving forward, to the point where late in my career, when they offered me the opportunity to be deputy of disguise, I did not want to do that. That was not in my path. I wanted to keep doing what I was doing. And it was my first husband who gave me some really solid advice. He said, well, to turn it down is kind of career ending. And so I didn't want to end that career. I kept going. But it felt like a natural flow. I was never making a plan for the next step. It just was like a path unrolling in front of me.
Yeah, but I think that's really good career advice. My students at Marymount, that they always want people to have a plan. And I explained to them, my plan was serendipity, right? Whatever opportunity presented itself, I took it. I didn't necessarily plan on it. So it's really, really some good advice. So I know that your late husband, Tony Mendez, was one of the trailblazers that won one of those awards at CIA. But I, right here and now, am going to give you a Trailblazer Award. I believe that you were blazing that trail right alongside of him, and that you were working and succeeding in a place that was very male dominated. So you too were a trailblazer. So I hope everyone recognizes that. So
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Linda.
Yeah, with all the power invested in me, which is none, but I truly admire you. We kind of grew up about the same time, but in different worlds, but still in the intelligence community. And as I was reading your book, I could relate to a lot of the stories, but there was something in there that really struck me and really surprised me. And that is when you were at the CIA, they required you to take a course on how to deal with men. I never had to take that course. Maybe that's a reason, but can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I found that to be really, really interesting.
Sure. That course is embedded in my brain. It will never leave. It was called RAP, Reality and Perception. It was put together by a woman named Jinx Anderson, who evidently designed several courses for the CIA. The purpose was to take women who were positioned in mid-level management and give us the tools to succeed, maybe to move up. So what they basically were teaching us was men's rules. These are the rules. You want to move forward. Let us show you how the men do this. And they brought in a Marine Corps gunnery sergeant, he was little, he was short, and he had the Smokey the Bear hat. Never knew his name. We called him Sir, and he was hell on wheels. So that the first day of the course, the first night of the course, we were in Williamsburg in a motel, and it was like 3 a.m. and it was pouring down rain. It was pitch black dark outside, and there was this bam, bam, bam on your door. Outside, outside, everyone outside. It was him. It was the gunny. And he, without any explanation, was going to teach us to march to his cadence in the rain, in the dark, at 3 a.m. This is the beginning of 2 weeks of his rules were no makeup, no jewelry, no perfume, no, just down to the basics. He was trying to recreate Paris Island in Williamsburg, and he came close. He had us marching. Whenever there was a moment, he'd line us up and we'd march through Williamsburg, colonial Williamsburg, this group of women, and he's doing that cadence thing. 2, 3, 4. We got really good.
Well,
over 2 weeks. We were not the Rockettes, but we were in step and in formation. That was just one of many, many things that he taught us.
Yeah. It sounds like there for a couple of weeks you were in the Marine Corps, and I'm not really sure how that might help you work with men. So the question might be were any of your classmates, did they learn these wonderful lessons and become senior leaders in the community like you? Or do you even remember any of them? Or
I remember them, like my classmates. Nobody went soaring into the stratosphere. I think we all did learn a little bit how to cope, I remember one of his rules was if you go in to see your boss with a problem, take him a solution at the same time. That stuck. I passed that on. I thought that was great advice. But I don't think anything really stuck. I wonder what. Yeah, I just don't know.
Yeah, that is good advice, and I've used that one a lot too. So I'm glad there was something. But I just found that to be very curious, and I'm wondering how many courses that men had to take on how to work with women. I'm guessing none.
I'm guessing you're right.
It just was a very. I've never heard anything like that, so it was a surprise to me to hear about that. So I know the other thing that has been really, really, frankly, cool about your career working in disguise is hanging out with movie stars and Supreme Court justices and things like that. So could you share a little bit about those kinds of things and how it was like working in Hollywood with Hollywood?
I'm leaving for Hollywood this afternoon for a visit. Tony actually started it. Tony had worked in disguise early in his career, when disguise was in the dumps. It just didn't have a lot of respect. And he went out and met with a man named John Chambers.
Oh,
And
yeah.
for years, we could never talk about John Chambers, about his name, of course. But then the PRB said we could talk about it. Chambers had won Oscars for makeup. He did Spock's ears.
Yeah.
He did the masks for Planet of the Apes. We were interested in moving forward with prostheses, with different ways to use disguise. And yeah, when you're out there, you meet people. They're always around. We not only worked with the makeup people in LA, we worked with the magic community out there as well. Their business was building deceptions and illusions for the magicians. But we weren't working with the magicians. We weren't interested in them. We were interested in the behind the scenes technical piece of how do you craft an illusion for the KGB on the street. They're trying to follow you down the street. You're trying to go meet someone. How can you fiddle around with that scenario? We learned some wonderful lessons from them, and we built some amazing tools. The last tool that came out of that I remember was our Jack in the Box. It was a pop-up dummy that was, when we were doing it, it was kind of a joke. The first one we did, the compressed gas that went into the dummy was so cold that the dummy blew up. It shattered in a car while one of the wives was driving it down the street somewhere in Eastern Europe. That was no good. The second one we did, we're still using compressed gas, and it went up and it was good, but then it wouldn't go down. And it was like one of those things outside of the car dealerships that you see, those things, but it's in your car and you're trying to bat it down and it won't go down. The magic community took a look at it and said, oh, well, this is not difficult. And they built something that went up, looked just like the person that left the car, and it went down. And it fit into a birthday cake.
Oh.
So you get in the car with a birthday cake, put the cake on the passenger seat.
That's pretty cool.
Had some fun with them.
So one of my other favorite stories, if you want to share, is the Ruth Bader Ginsburg story and how you were able to get a photo of her.
Well, I had decided to dedicate the book to Ruth Bader Ginsburg and to Eloise Page, these two women who were always kind of my North Star, they would say. And then I got to get up close and personal with Ruth Bader Ginsburg at the very end of writing the book. I was at the Kennedy Center with a friend. She's a regular there, and I go with her to the opera. Well, so does Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She went to the opera. So we were in this Circles Lounge, used to be called the Russian Lounge, before the event. And my friend said, just look over there, Jonna, here comes Nina Totenberg and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And she said, they're here a lot, almost every opera. So they came in, Ruth Bader Ginsburg sat down. This was toward the very end of her life, really. She was very bent over. She was clearly needed assistance. So Nina Totenberg went to get her tea, brought her tea. And while that's going on, my friend knew, I'm from the photo shop at CIA and I like to take pictures. And she said, no photos, Jonna, that's not here. So I said, okay, while I'm getting my little sequined bag positioned and I just stood it on his end and I'm talking to my friend. I'm not even looking at Ruth, and I took her picture. After that, we went into the opera. We sat down, the lights lowered. We're ready for the music. And then the lights came up just halfway. And we all looked back, and down the aisle comes Ruth Bader Ginsburg with an usher on each arm, and they're taking her to her seat. And the whole audience stands. Everybody claps. She sat down. Everybody sat down. The lights went down and the music began. And my friend said later, it happens every time she's here.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you had those clandestine skills to get this photo of her when she wasn't really looking. So before I wanted to switch topics a little bit, I'm noticing when I'm speaking to you, there's this really gorgeous painting behind you. And I know there's a story about it. So I wondered if you could tell us about that boat photo painting.
Yeah, that's Fletcher's Boathouse down in Georgetown. And it was Tony's last painting. It's starting to get really impressionistic, you can tell. I love this painting. It's a lot of his great paintings are gone, but I kept a few of them. I was talking to Joe Weisberg, the fellow from the Americans, and he was admiring it on Zoom, just like we are now. He wanted to buy it. I said, it's not for sale. That's mine. He said, can you make a copy? And I said, well, it says Giclée. And yes, I mean, I can have it made. And I did. And I shipped it to him. So there are 2 of these paintings. He has one, but I have the original.
Wow, that's really interesting. So I wanted to just take a little quick side away from the focus on women, but I wanted to get your opinion on where you see technology impacting disguise and how is it going to change? The mission's going to change, or how do you see that happening?
It's got to be huge. And as you very well, not being there, it's hard to project where it's going. There are a couple of factors, though, that are right up front with that question. One of them is that you can't do espionage from your armchair. You're going to be out there. You're going to be crossing borders. It is unavoidable. It's inevitable. You're going to be a physical presence. The human part of intelligence collection, I think we can't succeed without that. There will be face-to-face meetings. These people that are taking enormous risks to work with us, they need a human touch. They need somebody patting them on the back or holding their hand saying, you are protected. We are going to take care of this. The human thing remains. And so disguise becomes a part of that scenario. When I left, disguise had already segued from being nice to have, give somebody a DOP kit. Maybe they'd put it in the back of their safe. Maybe they'd use it. Maybe they wouldn't. While I was there, counter-narcotics came in, counterterrorism came in, and disguise morphed into a form of body armor. It would protect you. It wasn't just nice to have. In a lot of places, it was necessary. If you're going to be on the street, walking down the street, you don't want to be doing that in true face. Name of the book. I remember when I was in the Muslim world, I was thinking our women, and we had some women in operations then, the DO did. I thought, they're going to want it. These shalwar kameez outfits are made for our women. Put a woman inside of one of those. You don't know if she's a woman or not. They're just big, billowy things. But disguise was going to be critical. In Latin America, to be on the street where the cartels were really active, to be there as a gringo, as a North American, the first thing they'd think when they saw you is this CIA? They'd think, is this DEA? Are you drug enforcement? Should I shoot him? When I was in Bogota, one of the last trips I took, I was taken to the embassy every day. The lead car was full of people with guns. My car was armored, and the car behind it was full of security people with guns. That's how I went to work. They said, don't go out while you're here. Go to work, come back. Don't go out on the streets. I went out on the street once. I actually thought, it's in the book, this group of guys who were half drunk, I thought they were going to shoot me. So disguise became a lot more important. And there was the side issue of the fact that almost all of our operations officers were male, and they didn't want to wear wigs and mustaches. There was always that friction between us wanting to help them and them resisting any kind of frou-frou, any kind of dressing up, any kind of wig, any kind of mustache. I don't know. I don't know where it's at now. I know the technology has certainly shifted what we're doing. I think full face masks, when approaching one of those cameras on a light post, depending on the camera, the light source that camera is using, it might just fail miserably. You might look like you have a dandelion for a head. I don't know. But I know that the disguise people have to come up with workarounds.
Yeah, I agree with you that humans, I think it's about humans, right? And I think that we'll still have to have those kind of interactions. And the way we do it may change, but what we're doing is probably still going to be the same, and having those human interactions to get the information that we need or to get us into places that we need to be without them knowing who we are. And it's interesting. I like your point of saying that its role has changed. It's become a form of protection, not necessarily deception, but detection. Protection of you. So yeah, that's really, really great. Are there any other stories that were, or messages in the book that you feel like you really wanted to get out there that not anyone else has asked you about? I know you've done a lot of interviews, so I want you to tell us something you haven't told anyone else.
When I started writing this book, it was just a straight up memoir. It wasn't a complaint of any sort. I was just going to tell the story. I served some years in the CIA, And this is what it was like in the CIA. I was hoping that random civilians would pick it up, people who walk around with these incredibly mistaken views of who we are and what we do and why we do it. And I thought this can open their mind a little bit to the necessity and what's required to carry off these operations. That's where it started. And then my literary agent, Christy Fletcher, we were talking about it early on, and she said, well, this is very interesting, this story. It's an interesting look behind the curtain. It's almost like the magic community. People are interested because it's mysterious. They don't know what's there. So the fact that you're able to kind of reveal what's there is going to be helpful. But she said, but your book makes it seem awfully smooth, this thing about being a woman there. And Christy said, was it that smooth? And she really encouraged me to sit back and think and dig a little. And I'm like, well, there were moments. There was this moment and this one and this one. And your memory wants to smooth things out. And when you go back and look at like incident by incident, and I thought those incidents that were not smooth are not just CIA centric. They are female centric. They're the same issues that women have in America in the business place. I know at one point I picked up Michelle Obama's last book. It was in my living room. I hadn't read it yet because it was writing a book. I wasn't reading a book. So I'm flipping through it, literally. And she's talking about in the 1970s. She said she could not, she's reminding me when I read it, she could not take out a loan. She couldn't have a mortgage. She couldn't get a credit card without some man, her father, her husband, it's like the Muslim community. She needed a guy there to speak for her. And that reminded me of my mother, who worked at Boeing Aircraft her whole life. She was in computers when they were reel-to-reel, huge things. And my mother's career back then was, she was always slowly moving up until Boeing would lose a contract with the government. And then Boeing would lay people off. And they'd lay off their women. My mother, she'd be home 4 or 5 months. Boeing would get another contract. They'd hire everybody back. And there's my mom back now working for the young men she'd been training when she was let go. Now she's reporting to them. And that was my mother's career track. So when I looked at that and kind of looked at the way the CIA was managing its women or not managing its women, there was a real similarity. Women were hired at lower grades. Women were not promoted nearly at the same rate. When you get into the numbers at the CIA, the statistics of women and their career progress, it's pretty grim, actually. Not everywhere. As we all know, the CIA is practically run by women and has been for a bit of time. And they do very well on the 7th floor. In the analytical area, the analysts, women have proven themselves to be quite capable. I don't know that they get equal treatment, but they get better treatment than other parts of the CIA. It was the DO that was my focus, where the operational piece of the agency has always been sequestered over here, that's men's work, being out in the field, meeting with these foreigners, training these foreigners, dealing personally with them. The men said, that's our job. And that's where my battle was, because I knew for a fact that they said being a woman disqualifies you in a way because you have no value to a lot of these people. Think the subcontinent, the Middle East. They don't value their women. You think they're going to value you? I said, I know that they will value me when I'm the one telling them how to safely communicate their intelligence to us, how to safely conduct themselves, how to keep their families, their kids, their wives walled off from all of this. Heck yes, they're going to trust me because I'm a woman, not in spite of the fact that I'm a woman. And that's the advice I gave the women I worked with. Don't back away from this. Use it. It's a power. It's a soft.
Yeah. No, it's a superpower.
It is a superpower.
Soft power. Yeah. So I think that the women in the intelligence community have made great strides. You know, now we have Avril Haines, who's going to be at our AFIO lunch soon. So we're very proud of that. But I agree that there's still pockets of places where we need to make some more progress. So with that, I'm going to let you have the final word here of any advice for women entering the community.
I think women need to go in with their eyes open. And maybe this book will open their eyes a little bit. I'm not saying don't go in. I'm saying this was the career of a lifetime. But go in prepared to maybe bump into this and that is going to try and get in your way. The idea, one of the worst case scenarios that I cite in the book, I thought it was worst case, was Mike Scheuer and his team, the ones who actually tracked bin Laden down in Abbottabad and presented a target that the Navy SEALs and the United States government could deal with. But in the book, I'm going back to some quotes, and I found this more than once, where the men of the DO were referring to that unit, those analysts and Michael Scheuer, as Mike and his chicks. And it was just, I can't tell you when I read that, my heart just kind of denigrating this group who was actually having great success, way out in front of the rest of the CIA. I think there's huge room in the agency for women. I think there's more room than there used to be because doors are slowly opening. I don't meet everyone that works there. I meet a lot of people, though, who work there. I meet a lot of women who work there. They come and find me and say, maybe it's not quite as bad as it was when you were there. And that's great. I was lucky. I always say I was lucky. I had a lot of men that actually supported me, just a couple that I bumped into, one of them head first, and that's in the book. And those guys are still there. They don't care. It's not personality based. It's not anything based except that they don't want you. They don't want you in their station or they don't want you in their office. But with the right kind of support, women are doing just great. Yeah. They're doing better than they used to.
I agree. I too was lucky and had lots of good mentors that helped me along the way. So yeah. And I encourage my students to go into the community. I try to get them to manage their expectations. I think things are a lot better, and we just have to keep encouraging women to take those risks and take those roles. So Jim, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you. And so you can, Jonna, thank you. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. You have no idea how thrilled I am to have met you and to be able to speak to you more. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
That's great to hear. I love meeting you too. We will bump into each other. I know.
I'll see you at the luncheon.
See you at the luncheon. See you at the luncheon.
Well, the name of the book is In True Face. It's a fascinating read. I recommend it to you all. And I want to sincerely thank both Linda Millis and Jonna Mendez for a fascinating interview.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
AFIO is a small, nonprofit, apolitical, educational organization whose main mission is to help prepare the next generation of intelligence officers to confront the challenges our nation faces in the years ahead. To learn more or support our outreach programs, visit www.afio.com.